Well, welcome. Tonight, we have an old friend who comes to Milford often, usually bringing friends to help us do work.
That's one way to put it.
Why don't we start with an introduction?
Sure. Well, Al, I'm Lou Evangelist, Worcester County Sheriff. It's great to be back on Milford TV with you, and always a pleasure to be back, and looking forward to just talking about some of the initiatives we've been working on. Believe it or not, I've been sheriff now. I'm in my 5th year, and I'm proud of a lot of things we're doing. It's a challenging job, but very rewarding, and I've really enjoyed representing the folks in Worcester County as sheriff and trying to be a positive force in the county, especially down here in Milford, doing a lot of programs like you mentioned. My inmate work program, we've tripled the size of that program since I've been sheriff, and Milford has been a great recipient of that inmate labor, and we've done a lot of great things for the town that I'm very proud of, and I know the town appreciates it.
Well, we'll get into it. Can't believe it's been 5 years since you were running the first time and came on. Mm-hmm. Most people don't know what the sheriff is. Mm-hmm. Why don't you describe to our 6 loyal viewers, what is a sheriff?
Well, the sheriff is an elected position. In Massachusetts, we're done by counties. So my position is to be sheriff of the county. My primary job is to run the Worcester County Jail and House of Correction. And for those who wouldn't know, the jail is, where people who are pre-trial are held. And we have some serious people in that facility: murderers, rapists, sex offenders. I mean, if you name it, we have them. And that's about half our population. When I left the jail on my way here today, we had about 1,155 people in there.
Wow.
So, and I don't say give or take 1 or 2, because it doesn't work like that. But, with that population, about half of them are pre-trial jail people. The other half are sentenced inmates. Those are people that are sentenced to less than 2.5 years in prison. We call it the House of Correction, where they're served their sentence, and upon completion of their sentence, they're released back into the community. So my primary job as sheriff is to run that facility, and I believe the message that I campaigned on and what I've been trying to do as sheriff has been run a professional operation that can really help turn people's lives around. I mean, we keep bad people off the streets, and I hope the worst of those go to state prison and go there for a real long time. But there were about 6,000 people, Al, that went in and out of my facility last year. Some were there as short as a day or two and were bailed out. Others we've had people that have been held there for years while they were awaiting trials for things like murders and rapes. And then we have those sentenced inmates, about 2.5 years or less, average sentence about 9 months. And those are the people I've tried to implement a lot of new programming for: rehabilitation programs, substance abuse programs, education programs, not in a way completely out in the way that we do, like we're doing it all for the inmate. No, we do it for the community. Because if those people who get released from our facility, and they get released every day, and I know people throughout this county oftentimes think, well, they don't come back to my neighborhoods. Well, that's just not a fact. There are people in that facility from all 60 towns in Worcester County. Practically every neighborhood in this county have people that will be released this year coming back to your community. So I try to have the mission of the Sheriff's Department that I ask every person we hire, whether it be a correctional officer or an educator or a substance abuse counselor, anything. Do you want to join me in the mission of turning people's lives around? 90% are substance abusers, drug addicts, alcoholics. We want to make sure that when they get out, they're less likely to hurt people in our community when they got there. That's a challenging environment now, but that's our essence of why I believe the people in Worcester County gave me the faith, and I thank them for that, to go up there and run that place in a way that helps our community. And that's one of the primary jobs we have. We run the facility, we keep people off the streets, and we try to return people who are less likely to repeat offend. And just to give you a quick overview, but in addition to that, and we can talk a lot about the programs we run in and out of that facility, but I also happen to run some what they call is diversion centers. And what there are community centers. There's one in Fitchburg, there's one in Worcester, and there's one that I opened in Webster recently. And these are community correction centers, Al. And what they are is essentially, we take people who would normally be in the court system, and the judge may say to them, I'm not going to send you to the jail or the House of Correction. We're going to give you an opportunity to put you on probation. We're going to drug test you every day. We're going to let the sheriff's office run a community correction center for you, and that's what we do. And I run 3 of those as well. And in those offices, we take people who are lower level offenders, and we drug test them, and we give them educational opportunities and vocational skills and things like that. And we try to integrate them in society, get them productive, and give them an opportunity not to go to jail. Because if I can do that program successfully for $4,000 to $5,000 a year per person versus $50,000 at the jail, I think it's taxpayer better spending of money, and the success rate, not everybody belongs in prison. These are the people that we believe can get a better chance to turn their lives around in these very structured programs. And then the final piece is we run a civil process office where we serve process and evictions and things like that the sheriff runs. So it's a big operation, and you gave me a lot of leeway to run with that question, but I wanted to give you the overview.
Amazed me because when I think of prisons, and it may be that I'm naive, but you have different levels, all the way to where Supermax and things on that line. Yeah. But it seems like there's a distinct demographic. If you're this type of offender, you're at Walpole. If you're at this type, you seem to get everything.
Yeah.
And you get the kid who was just stupid, we'll talk about face to face, but you also get a murderer waiting on trial.
That's right.
How do you deal with such a diverse population?
What's the most challenging part of it, Al, believe it or not, in some ways, it's the initial process, the classification process. Because we have a huge area of the jail for people who are in jail, and they have to be classified, and because we have limited resources, and this is for a whole nother show we'll talk about, but the budget of our office is not why I'm here, but it's very challenging. We don't have the highest budget in the state. It's very ad hoc the way the budgets have developed over the years, and I think I've inherited a very challenging, unfortunate budget with a very old building. I don't cry about it. I have a job to do, and we're doing it. But one of the things other sheriffs have, Al, they have an orientation unit it's a separate building. All these new inmates that come in, they spend maybe a week in that building, and you get to classify. You get to find out who you've got, what gangs they're in, what diseases they may have, what illnesses they're having, whether they're going through, they're detoxing right now. All these important issues before we send them out into the general population. We don't have that kind of operation, so there's a lot of challenges. The serious offenders, we have to put them in a higher security area, of course, lower offenders, but we have to make sure they don't get put in areas with contrary gang members and things. So it's a challenge every day, and it's a hard job working in corrections, the officers that are on the front lines, and I like to talk about that because we have all respect for our police, we're out there every day, our firefighters who go into burning buildings, but the correctional officers, they're walking the blocks, and they're not.
Lou, God bless them.
You better believe it.
At least, and we love our police here, as I mentioned. Yeah. As you look across the country, different cities and towns have had rallies and protests. Yeah. We had one for our police in favor, just to say thank you. But I look at our police force; they get to interface with a lot of nice people every day.
Right.
And then every so often you get the one who's not so nice. Your corrections officers, I can't imagine that the vast majority of people they interface with on their job fall into the nice people category.
Yeah, well, you're right. And that's why I like to bring it to the attention of the public when I can, given an opportunity to speak with you. Because when you're dealing with the blocks in prison, first of all, these inmates have nothing to do all day, but sometimes they call it con artists for a reason. They have nothing to do but scheme on, and they're working on the officers constantly, trying to scheme them or get something or whatever, or sneak things in or whatever. So it's a challenging environment. But I gotta tell you this, the flip side of it though. There are people in that prison, and I'm not, I'm a former prosecutor, and I'm as tough on crime as anybody, and I'm all for, maximum prisons and sentencing and things like that. And I have some, we could talk about it, but some issues on the idea of reforms and things which I support some of. But there are a lot of people in my facility also who have made some mistakes. And they do want to turn their life around, and they do have substance abuse problems. And we can't come in with a mindset of just throw them in a jail cell, keep them off our streets, warehouse them is the term they used in the 80s. There was a lot of prisons built and a lot of ideas of just throwing the key away, but we noticed that when people got out, they were recommitting crimes at a higher rate than ever. And I think what we have to do is we can always be tough on crime, but the adage of being smarter on crime, and that's the kind of the approach I've tried to take in this business, is that I want to make sure that those people that work at our jail do share the mission of, we want to keep the people in Milford and this community safe. And a lot of people who get out of my jail are going to come back to your neighborhood. And I think the people in Milford sent me there to say, Sheriff Lou, please help turn these people around so when they get out, they're less likely to deal drugs to my kids or assault and batter my family or drunk drive or hurt somebody in our community. And the way to do that isn't to just throw the key away and let them out. If they do that, they go right back to drugs, right back to the streets, right back to crime. What you do is you try to meet them with a carrot and a stick, but you try to offer them an opportunity. Some take it, some don't. Some go to prison 5 times before they bottom out. But Al, what we try to do in our business, find that moment when they want to be reached, and you try to turn their lives around. Because if we do, we all win. So there's a lot of programs we run at the jail.
I remember reading when you said the quickest way to prison to young people was booze and pills, or somewhere along that line. Isn't that the whole essence of that program, the face-to-face, to try and let these kids know this is good, this is not so good?
Well, I thank you for mentioning the face-to-face program. Just to preface it, it's a program. When I was running for sheriff, I looked at things that there's no specific job description for a sheriff. You can do and be innovative in things. And one of the programs I promised I'd bring to the county was I would be a sheriff that would bring a program into the schools, because the first thing you learn as sheriff is 90% of your inmates are addicts or substance abusers. And you also figure this out. I mean, you'd figure it out as fast as I did, Al. You'd spend a day or two in the prison, talk to inmates, and you'd realize that, first of all my future inmates are essentially, where are they right now? They're all in the middle and high schools in Worcester County. And they're all facing challenges every day on choices. And a lot of times it involves drugs and alcohol. All the inmates kept telling me the same stories. If I'd known what I knew now, I bought every myth there was out there, that marijuana was safe because it was grown from the earth, that prescription pills were safe because doctors prescribed them, all these myths about drugs, that I could quit any time I wanted. They didn't know the facts. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to build a program around the facts of drugs and alcohol. And I'm going to build it around the stories the inmates told me. And I'm going to make it innovative, and I'm going to make it interesting. So I have Charlie Sheen and Eminem and Lindsay Lohan in it. I have all these celebrities in it that I show have had problems, and we have a lot of videos in it. But it's been a very successful program. I've been to Milford on several occasions. Chief comes out with me when I do it sometimes. But the idea is this. I'm going to give you a little snippet of what I talk about. I sum up at one point during the presentation, and by the way, I'm proud of this program. We've been in almost every single high school and middle school in Worcester County at least once, some several times. I've been asked to come present this to the governor's opioid task force. I presented it to schools in Springfield, to Lowell. We've done personally now, myself and my small team, but me personally have presented this program to over 160,000 students, okay?
Wow.
But let me give you this one. Just try this one. I tell every school I go to, at some point in the presentation, I say, I'm going to tell you the life story of all my inmates, or most of them anyway, and I'm going to tell you it in 15 seconds. Yeah, that's what they do. Everybody looks like that. And I have I have one or two people with me. One of them holds up his clock. He's my tech guy, and he holds it up. And I say, "You ready, Bill?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, I was in middle of high school, started doing drugs, got addicted, so my family kicked me out because I started stealing from them. So I went to my friend's house, moved in, stole from him to feed my addiction. He kicked me out, robbed my neighbor, got arrested, and I went to prison.
Wow.
That's the life story of almost every inmate I've got in my jail today. Now, okay, they didn't steal from their parents, they stole from their grandparents. Okay, they didn't go rob a neighbor, they went down.
Variations on the same common theme.
Same story. And what I tell the young people in Worcester County, Al, is this. Do you want your life story to be summed up in 15 seconds? No, you want your life story to be about, you know what the highs in life should be? Shouldn't be popping a perk, or an oxy, or smoking pot, or getting high drinking. The highs in life should be graduating from high school, joining the military, getting a great job, having children, raising a family. Those are what life is about. These other things can derail you. And I'm just bringing the stories that I learned. And I feel like every sheriff is the perfect person to go into schools and talk to young people, because who knows better than us who are on the front lines of people whose lives have been destroyed. And don't think for a minute when you go to prison and you've got that Corey now and you've got that hanging over your head, your life will ever be the same. It won't. And I try to let the young people know you still have every opportunity in the world. You want to talk about those opportunities? They're right here, right now, in the great schools of Worcester County. Most kids in the world would give anything to have the opportunities they have. And the easiest way to derail it, going by my inmates now, start down that road with drugs and alcohol, and you buy all those myths. So the whole program lasts about 45 minutes. I go to schools practically every single week, And we're going strong, and we'll be over 200,000 next year. And families, kids come up to me, tell me that they still remember some of those stories. Like, I'll give you one of the stories. You remember Lenny Bias? You're probably old enough to remember Lenny Bias. A lot of parents do. Young people have never heard of him.
What a possible carear.
Yeah, nobody's ever heard of him today. You know what I do? I show them a picture of Michael Jordan. I show them a picture of LeBron James, and everybody knows who they are. I show them a picture of Lenny Bias. And I say, the reason you don't know him, let me show you a little story. And I have a 2-minute video about his life. And the bottom, the punchline is, he thought the old myth that trying drugs wouldn't hurt him. And he ingested that, the Coke, and his heart stopped beating. He was rushed to hospital, he died. And I guess what I try to do, Alf, through this program, and a lot of the schools, the administrators, the health professionals come up to me later and they say, you hit all the buttons. You found the buttons for young people. I got teenagers, I know how they think, and they care about vanity in the end. And you know what I finish with? I finish with a technology we have where we take photographs of students and principals and teachers, and we can show how it was initially developed to show people who were burn victims, how their appearance would improve if they had plastic surgery. We use the technology to show people at the end how their appearance would worsen.
Yeah, this is what you're going to look like in 20
if you
years.
In like 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And I show before and after photographs of drug abusers, and they're astonishing. You can go online and see 1,000 of them right now. But I finish with their friends and their teachers, and to get the point home. And if I can't tell them that their life will be derailed from that, or their internal organs, just pictures, or I want to let them know, if you care what you look like, and most young people do, it's going to affect your appearance, if nothing else. So far the program's been a great success. I'm proud of it, and I'm committed to continue doing it as sheriff. And I think every sheriff in America should be doing a program
Now,
like
we're sitting out here in Milford. We're 19 miles away from Worcester. And a lot of people have this image that most of the crime will happen in the city. How diverse, when you say you have inmates from across the 60 towns?
Oh, yeah.
But is it 90% in one or two? And
No, not even close. Obviously, the higher density populations area have more people. If you took the cities in the county, Fitchburg, Leominster, Worcester, the Southbridge, Milford, the bigger towns, they may have a larger percentage of people in the sense of who's at the jail. But every town has people.
But per capita, if you took a town, Milford's 28,000. Yep. Take a 100,000 person town. Is it 5 times more people, or is it 3 times because just 3 times the population?
I haven't looked at those statistics exactly. I think there are certain areas where there's a little higher crime rate, and I think we know those areas, and they probably have more inmate population in those communities. But what I try to convey to people, and it's getting worse, and it's part of what face-to-face is about too, but the thing is this, I hosted the governor's first opioid task force. Everyone is, I think in the 5 years I've been sheriff, we have seen a watershed change in the perception of substance abuse. We can debate all day whether it's a disease or a choice or whatever, but there's clearly, if your family has not been touched by, substance abuse at this point, and the trends continue, you'll be one of the few families in America that can't do it. And my own family's been touched by substance abuse. My own family's been touched by addiction and incarceration. It happens to families every day. And I just think we have to realize that this problem, because it's drugs, and if you talk to my inmates, they'll tell you, most of the crimes today, really, the majority of the average criminal activity happening in our communities is people that are high when they do it, or they're doing the crime to get high. And we're in an opioid epidemic right now. There's no question about it, Al. We are in a
most of that, when I read, doesn't start with the kids starting with heroin or something along that line. I hear sports kid, clean, nice kid, clean record, hurts himself, hurts herself, picks up some oxy, gets accustomed to it, and then all of a sudden can't afford it. So the heroin ends up being a cheap substitute. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Well, you kind of laid out a lot of the way it goes. I'd just like to back up a little and say, I deal with this issue every day. Sometimes I feel as sheriff, as much I run a rehabilitation drug clinic as I do, a jail facility, because almost everybody comes in with these substance abuse issues. But you just gave a pathway that many people have that story, and I'll go over it again with you. But I just want to be clear, I think sometimes the pendulum swings, and now it's kind of getting away. Well, everybody's an innocent victim that becomes addicted, and there are a lot of people, and I'll tell you how it happens. But I'd still say it's 50% of the people do the traditional route. They start drinking when they're 13, 14, smoke some pot when they're 15, 16. They get high. One of the films I have in my program says, one of the people say in the film, when I got high, it changed everything. So it's when you get high and you're high on something else, or you want to get high on something else, you move up the ladder. And I work with a group of people. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. It's a group, as one parent said to me, it's the one group you don't ever want to be part of, and they're called Learning to Cope, and they're parents of addicts. And a lot of these kids have died. And I've been to more than my fair share of funerals and wakes of people who've OD'd since my time as sheriff. So if we get a chance to talk about this later, I've moved from the area of being concerned about this epidemic. I've moved into the area of being angry about the fact we're in a war right now as a country on opioids. They're killing our young people. They're killing our families. We need to step up. And I don't think we as a country have tackled this issue head on. I think we have to look at the pharmaceutical industries. We have to look at doctors prescribing. We have to look at, there's a lot of issues at this. But back to your original idea, absolutely many, many stories of people, you try an opiate because it's prescribed. And we all know they're out there. Let's kid ourselves. If you know what people tell me now, just to divert for a second, do you know that many people are telling me they go to open houses now? They don't have no interest in buying houses. They're going through to sign in, and then they go up and they go right at the medicine cabinets to find opioids.
Lord.
Yep. I mean, this is the culture we're living in. Most of my inmates tell me they stole their first opioids from their parents and grandparents. So I go around and talk to seniors all the time, and I say, first thing you gotta do, go home, go through your medicine
Clean out the medicine cabinet.
Go through them, because that's where your own family are looking through these. It's an epidemic right now. So it's out there. A lot of young people are doing this. They are getting injured, they're getting prescribed, or they have surgery, minor surgery sometimes. They get prescribed these opiates. What is happening, which is something I learned, I didn't know, but I'd like to share with you and your audience, is that a young brain is not fully developed out. And especially like until 25, for example, you're 17 years old. Most 17-year-olds have a natural sense of insecurity because that's the way your brain is wired. We always joke about, teenagers they got the accelerator down, they just don't have the brake down. Why do you think people at 16 love to ride roller coasters and people at 40 get tired of it? Well, because we're a little more sensible than 17, you just go crazy. So what happens is you go to a party and they're out there now. And maybe instead of drinking like we were BYOB parties when I was a kid, now it's BYOP parties and people are bringing their own pills. That's what they call them. And you go to a party and someone offers you an Oxy or a Vicodin or something, and you see it in a prescription bottle, and these young kids don't think it's not a real drug. It's a real drug, it's a prescription.
It's medicine.
And they take it, and guess what they feel? They feel a little euphoric. They might feel a sense of security. They might go up to talk to that girl they didn't feel comfortable talking to before, and they like that feeling, and they don't know that their brain hasn't fully developed. They just like that feeling. Does every kid the next day wake up and think, I want that feeling again? Nope. But a lot of them do. And the thing I try to tell young people is, you don't know if you're going to be one of those people that starts craving that feeling. You don't know. And that's the scary part of these drugs. And that's why people have to understand that I try to break down the myths. These are back to my inmates and the myths. They tell me, Sheriff, bring the facts to the young people of Worcester County because I can't do it. I'm in prison. But tell them, don't believe those myths. They're not true. You can't quit anytime you want. That these opiate drugs are dangerous and addictive. And it's happening. So you are seeing a lot of people who get that opportunity to take that drug first out of the gate. I mean, there are statistics that show for the first time in 2011, the American youth started for the first time, more people were trying prescription painkillers than smoking marijuana as their first drug experience. That's a watershed change in drug use in America, and we're on the front lines of it. These young kids today, they're calling them Generation RX.
Oh, God.
That was Generation we or me.
Yeah.
Or Y or X, whatever. Now they're Generation RX. So there's a lot going on, Al. It's a big problem out there. I just want to alert parents, grandparents.
But I mean,
keep your eyes
Lou,
open.
it sounds like the first thing you do is clear out your medicine cabinet. You know, that you don't have leftover Vicodins or Percocets that maybe you got legitimately.
Yeah. Well, if you keep them hanging around, there's a real good chance they're going to end up in someone's hands that you don't want to have them. And if you leave them around because you think you may need them for whatever reason, put them in a secure place. Treat them as a valuable because they are going to be abused by someone. And I'm just saying what I hear. My inmates, some of them as young as 18, 19 years old, when I talk about how they ended up in here, they tell me. One guy told me a story. How do you forget a story like this? He says, He was like 24 years old, graduated from college and everything. But he's like, I started taking OxyContin when I was like, I had an injury and I ended up getting addicted to it. And, I knew I was at the end of the line when I was underneath my grandmother's bed. She was on her deathbed, and they put her on painkillers to ease her from the pain she was having. He goes, I crawled under her bed and stole her painkillers. But,
I don't understand the whole Oxy thing. When Purdue started getting pressure, they said they were going to reformulate it so that it would only be available in extended release, so that you couldn't get a bolus of Oxy.
Right.
Whatever happened? I mean, most of these kids don't know how to extract or distill down pills.
Right.
Are they just taking more of them, or?
Well, I'll ask you one question, and this is one of the things that you really have to ask yourself. And we can talk about what I mean by this statement, but the American people are 5% of the world's population. We consume 90% of the world's opiates. Now, I'll ask you an obvious question. Are the American people the least tough people in the world? Do we tolerate pain the least? Not last I remember. We're a pretty hardy group of people. So you ask yourself, why are this many opioids being pushed in the American people? Well, we can talk about that for a long time, but I think it's a legitimate question.
Do you have any idea of the opiate, how would I say, the amount of opiates being consumed? How much of it is legitimate, prescribed medication versus homegrown? When you think of meth, okay, I don't think any pharmaceutical company makes it and nobody prescribes it.
No.
So it's 100% illegal. But when you think of things like opiates, what percentage, you have any feeling, is like legit just being used?
Yeah. It's a great question, and I don't have the answer for you, but I can tell you it's a huge amount of it that is not being used appropriately. Let's just throw a number about 50%. That's an enormously big number. Where would I come up with that number? Well, we had a hard time closing down the pill mills in Florida. They were manufacturing opiates at a rate that was unbelievable. People were lining up there. They had a doctor's office on the corner writing scripts. People were picking them up by the hundreds for a week. They'd pick up 100 a day, and they'd get in their car and drive up I-95. And that was the opiate highway.
Well, let's say your numbers are off, and it's not 50%, it's 30. For the love of God, if I want to keep opiates that were legitimately given to me, for $29, I go to BJ's, I buy a safe, right?
Yep.
Throw them in the safe, lock them up. Now, my children, and I'm not going to try and decide, well, you've got to be a bad kid if they use it. Whatever it is, wouldn't that be a way of kind of taking the majority of the 50% out of the reach of children?
Well, you would certainly take a segment of the ones that were, like given by a doctor's prescription and being abused. What I think has happened, though, and maybe it's starting to shut down now, there was a lot of winking and nods about doctor prescriptions in some certain states. When I'm talking about hundreds, they were given with the one idea in mind. They knew when they sold these pill mills, they were being transported across state lines for criminal activity.
I need 100 pills because my back is hurting me.
Oh, no, this was, I'm going to load up with 1,000 pills. I'm going to pay $100 for those pills down here, and I'm going to unload them for, and by the way, this gets back to your question earlier about how you migrate up to heroin. You know how it works? I had one parent at a Learning to Cope tell me, and it really hit me. And he said to me, and I was really proud of this, he said, Sheriff, you really understand the substance abuse opiate issue better than any elected official I've met. And I said, well, thank you. And he says, but he explained to me what happened to his son. And he said, Sheriff, when we were younger, you had things like marijuana and things like that, maybe, different drugs, but it was way up here to get to heroin.
Yeah.
And the thing that's happened since then, since we were younger, is, I use this as kind of a play on music, but now we have a stairway to heroin. It means you go from marijuana, you start taking a Percocet, next thing you do, you're doing oxys, you're doing oxy 80s, and next thing you know, you're taking those steps right up to heroin. So before you know it, you're pretty much addicted to opiates anyway. And then what happens was this, your doctor, for whatever reason, says no more, or you can't get any more oxys, so you got to go to the street. And you can get those in a prescription bottle. I mean, my thing's $10 for whatever.
I was going to say, I remember our chief said, Al, you're not thinking that, when you go to Rite Aid or whatever, yeah, you pay your $10, $20 copay. He was telling me the price each was some phenomenal amount for one pill.
It's $1 a milligram. So if
an Oxy 80's $80,
$80 on the street, a Perk 30's $30 on the street. Now, by the way, if you want to know where the big drug dealing is going on in America today, it's outside your CVS's, outside your Walgreens. That's where the action is. They come out and there's dealing. But think about this. So you're an Oxy. Now, I had one inmate tell me one time, and this is a random story. There's thousands of people could tell you this story. But I asked him, how'd you end up here? Sheriff, I was popping pills, and he goes, I had surgery, and I was in a lot of pain. I was popping pills, and next thing I knew, I was, honestly, I got addicted to them. And I was on the street scrambling to get them, and I wasn't working. And
if it's one pill a day, Lou, that's like 25, 30 grand a day. I mean, a year.
Well, you do the math, but think about this. The guy says to me, I was charged, if I wanted a Perk 30, it was $30. I didn't have $30. So if you wanted to get the $30, you probably have to resort to crime to get it. But then what he said was this, I'll never forget it. He's like, somebody came up to me with a little bag, and they said, dip your finger in this. It'll be the same feeling, and I can sell you this bag for $7. So he goes, I dipped my finger in, and I put it on my tongue. And you know what? Pain went away. So I said, I'm buying that bag for $7. And after a couple of weeks of doing that on my tongue, it didn't work anymore, so I started sticking it up my nose. And guess what? He didn't know what it was. He just knew it took the pain away, and it was something. It was heroin. And before he knew it, like everybody, by the way, you never try heroin for the first time by taking a needle and sticking it in your arm. No, you smoke it, you put it.
Nobody ever explains to you that it's a respiratory suppressant.
Nope.
When you think about it, it does its job rather effective. It shuts down your respiration system. So maybe now when you start shooting it or sticking it up your nose before the receptors get dulled, you get a little purer, you get too much, and all of a sudden you stop breathing.
Well, that's what's happening out there. They're cutting all this heroin now with like fentanyl or other drugs. You have no idea. That's one of the other messages I tell young people. You have no idea what you're taking when someone offers you a drug. Somebody's making a buck off you, and you don't know whether it be Molly or Oxy or heroin, whatever. You have no idea what's in that because most of it's made in somebody's bathtub or some backyard. They're cutting it with whatever they want, and people are dying. And we had 11 people die in Worcester last summer in a 2-week period, cut with fentanyl, heroin. Or what happens is with my inmates, for example, or people that try to give it up, you get out of prison, you're a heroin addict. Now, you're not getting drugs while you're in prison. It's a struggle, but we keep them out as best we can, of course. Zero tolerance. You get out of prison, the guy's a 4-bag-a-day heroin user. Well, he gets out, his body can't adjust that anymore. He's a 1-bagger. He doesn't know it, so he shoots up 2-3 bags, he's dead. OD'd. Now, you get Narcan, and we got all those other conversations we can have, but we're in a major... And I think you and I, probably similar ages, we remember the heroin that was being done in the 60s and 70s.
But you had a stigma.
Very much so.
When we were kids, the heroin addicts were kind of like the lepers of our century.
It was unthinkable to do heroin. It was unthinkable. And now it's happening to everywhere you go, it's happening. Whether it be in rural areas and urban areas, whether it be in, college campuses or, anywhere, it's happening everywhere. And I'm fearful for our young people. And I think we as a country need to say, we got to tackle this problem now. This is serious business.
What do you do, Lou? I mean, our prisons seem to be full of drug-related issues. How do you stop opiates?
Well, I talk to judges every day. We got a drug court we've got now working in Webster and Dudley. I've just talked to the judges in Worcester. We're going to start a drug court in Worcester where, the Sheriff's Department will be a great partner with them. And we all come to the conclusion, if we could get drugs out of our system, we could turn our courthouses into movie houses. That's how much of the criminal.
How do you do it?
Well, that's a very challenging question. The only thing I can chime in on is to say, I think you need to do a very comprehensive approach. And you got people now who are addicted. You need to get beds for them. You need to get treatment for them. You need to, give them assistance. I think we got to work, and that's what I do as sheriff with this face-to-face. We've got to educate. We've got to bring people in on young ages, sometimes as early as elementary school, but middle school and high school, education on this issue. We need to deal with doctors. We need to pharmaceuticals. I mean, there's a lot of money involved in this. Let's cut to the chase. There's a lot of money at stake, and I think Washington in its infinite wisdom, has been too much green-lighting the pharmaceutical industries,
Well, I mean, I have no sympathy if there's a physician who knows that I can't do 10 or 20 pills a day and still prescribes me that many.
Right.
Because, I mean, like you say, if that's a wink that he knows he's getting whatever benefit because he knows I'm going to go sell it, I have no sympathy for that person. He ought to be visiting you.
I think we ought to be seriously looking at alternatives to opiates. And my research has shown that there are a lot of other things you can take besides opiates that can help you deal with pain. And I'm not minimizing people that are in pain and need these things. There is a clear market for those type of products. But I'm talking about the fact we've got an epidemic pandemic on our hands, and we need to rethink this as a country. We fought a war in World War II, Vietnam. We fought wars. We're in a war right now, and it's happening inside our borders. And believe me, Al, you want to get, where's the root of it? Some of this is coming through the Mexican drug cartels right now. Billions of dollars in industry. They're infiltrating our country. Gangs, the drugs, they're pushing the drugs in certain areas of our country right now. It's all about a buck. So I'd say, there's a lot of ways to look at it. I mean, I think we should be identifying the Mexican drug cartels, dealing with that issue with the Mexican government or ourselves. I think we should be identifying drugs that use alternatives to opioid use. I think the FDA should, somebody suggested an opioid, the first opioid hearing we had with the governor's office, somebody walked in and said, the first thing I'll do is blow up the FDA, let's start all over again. Now, I'm only giving you ideas that we need to seriously have a discussion in this country. How do we change it? And I think part of it is that. You're right on the money. I'd be saying to anybody, why do you need to prescribe more than 5 or 10 OxyContins per time? Let's monitor 60, 80, walking in. That's craziness. It's going to fall into the other hands.
Even if legitimately I'm in pain and you're keeping me on, because you can look at standard of care and you say, okay, I blew out my knee, I'm really hurting. After a week, 2 weeks, whatever the normal standard of care is, I ought not need the same level. And I'd push it back to say, physician, it's your responsibility to look and say, wait a minute, Lou, you've been on this. I did your knee 3 months ago. How is it you're still taking it for pain? I'm not going to prescribe that level to you anymore. We've got to do something.
I'm not going to disagree with that at all. No, I agree. I mean, that's part of the equation here. One of the things I was surprised to hear, not surprised, but you hear and you realize that there's a lot of angles to this. Some people were saying that doctors are getting, a lot of people are asking the same question, doctors. And guess what doctors are doing? They're responding by some of them saying, I'm not prescribing those anymore.
Right.
But we're hearing people come and say, I've been on these drugs for 2 years, and now my doctor, cold turkey, no mas. So what they end up with heroin addicts. I mean, I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying it's a complicated problem.
To try and dictate medical policy. You don't want sociology majors telling an MD how to take care of their patients. But on the other hand, computers are wonderful. They can give you standards of care. And they can say the average person will last this long in this pain, and then it steps down and your knee's fine or your back. Okay, so 90% of your patients ought to fall in that window. If 10% doing the rest are stretched out, you got some splaining to do, Lucy. I mean, there ought to be a medical ethics review.
I agree wholeheartedly. The only thing I can say is someone who's been, I had a lot of my experience before, Sheriff, doing medical work and deposing doctors and things like that. And pain is very subjective, and you can't objectively measure it. So, it gets that gray area where, you tell people the average person should only have pain for 3 weeks, and then you're going to have a patient that comes in and has the most agonizing pain for 6 weeks, and it's hard.
But that's going to happen. But 80% of them will fall in the middle of the Gaussian curve.
I agree.
Now, we turn to something a little brighter, a little happier. Puppies. You're saving puppies.
We're trying.
I see a program matching up.
Yeah. That I just left the work release building where those inmates are paired up with dogs. I've always been a big proponent of corrections and using animals as a way to kind of help rehabilitate inmates. And I could not partner up with Needs, who train dogs for a couple of years. They can do it with inmates, and they help train them for disabled veterans and things like that. I was very familiar with Needs because when I was a state representative, they were in my district. I brought Needs in right away. We couldn't match up with them. it was something I was disappointed in. But we found another shelter. Our inmate work crews that are out there, and we save over almost $6 million now in Worcester County with those inmate crews since I've been sheriff. And many of those projects right here in Milford.
Right here in Milford.
Milford Town
So
Hall.
I said Lou and his
Senior
friends.
Center.
We like to see Lou and his friends.
We're out there doing it. And one of our work crews was at a Second Chance Animal Shelter in Brookfield, and we started a conversation. They're a no-kill shelter. They have only about 25 kennels. They're full. They are trying to find homes for their dogs. Some of them have minor behavioral issues. Well, guess what we worked out with them? We will take them in a 2 months, 8-week program. Our inmates will get paired up with a dog with, essentially relatively minor behavioral issues. They nip. They've been street dog. They've been strays. They haven't had a chance to get the basic skills down. They jump up, things like that. We have the Second Chance Animal Shelter. They came to us. They will train our inmates. Only our best inmates get a chance to be in this program. They're in our lowest risk area called the work release building. They're the inmates that are going to be released in the next, within the next few months.
But that gives incentive to the inmates too, right?
Absolutely. Since we noticed this, for example, we pair up an inmate with dogs. We got 3 dogs in our facility today. All the dogs that have come to us, not only are they being saved, they're being trained, they're being adopted. Everyone has been adopted so far, and people are lining up even at the jail to adopt them, our employees. The inmates are bonding, and the affection they have for these animals, you can see them changing them as people and making them less likely to recidivate. And it's also dropped the stress level in the block down. The officers say the place has never been safer and better run. They look forward to coming to work. So it's one of those things, every now and then you can match up a program that's a win-win-win. We're saving animals, we're giving our inmates a bonding opportunity and a skill to train these animals.
Yeah, but you're also reinforcing positive behavior. If you're saying, these are the inmates that I believe I got the best chance not to repeat.
Right.
And you tell them, hey, look, if you do this, if you exhibit this kind of behavior, you get a reward.
Exactly.
It sounds like almost like we're bringing up our children, saying, good behavior should be rewarded.
Exactly.
But that sounds like a winner. And, you talk about no-kill shelters, which are wonderful, but once they're full, the puppies go somewhere that maybe isn't a no-kill shelter. So if you can open up rooms in the no-kill,
that's what we're doing.
You're saving puppies no matter what.
Second Chance Animal Shelter could not be happier with this program. We could not be happier with the program. It's all done for $0. Zero taxpayer dollars.
Even better.
Doesn't cost a penny, turns people's lives around and saves animals. It's a win-win. I said I literally just came from that facility, that building before I came down here. One of my inmates that's been one of the primary dog trainers, he had pictures of 4 dogs he's trained like his own children. And he was proud of that. And I know this guy. I've gotten to know him. And I'm telling you right now, this guy he's convincing me that he's at a point in his life when he gets out of it, he's never going to come back. And I think this program has helped him get to that
He may go out, and even if he doesn't become a dog trainer, he'll go out and get a regular job. What more could you want coming out of, the jail than somebody who isn't going to get a return ticket?
Well, Reagan once said the best social program is a job, and that's I certainly agree with that. And it's challenging to get the inmates to paid positions and jobs. But you know what? If they stay off their substance abuse, they turn their lives around, they exhibit good behavior at the jail, and they get out and they got an environment that supports them getting out. And big part of what we do, Al, the Sheriff's Department, we have an enormously talented team in the reentry team. We meet with inmates 60 days, 30 days, 10 days out, and we make sure they have a place to go. They have, a safe environment to go to. We try to get them into programming to support them and their ability to, stay off of drugs. Those are the kind of health care, if they need it, to keep them in that. We do those things. People get out. They make it 24, 48, 72 hours. They might actually stay out of prison, and I mean stay out of crime. And what does that do for our community? It makes us a safer place.
Now, the facility you're in, 5 years ago, when you were just a wee almost sheriff, you said the building wasn't the most, it's not a Taj. It wasn't the most optimal.
Nope.
Yet, if I read right, the accreditation awards, something to feel proud of.
Very.
Even more so that you're in an older building and you're still getting the accolades?
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because I wanted to make sure we were nationally accredited, and we fulfilled all the requirements, not only of the State Department of Correction, which come to audit us, but also the national, the highest standards available. It's called the American Correctional Association. They come in every 3 years. I've invited them in, and we received this year the the highest rating ever received by the Worcester County Sheriff. But not only that, the highest rating almost conceivable with our facility. The only areas we didn't complete 100%, we received a 99.54 rating. The only pieces we didn't get were because our facility was too old and too antiquated to comply. We just could not get to the 100% because our buildings are falling apart. And it's not our fault. We're working
It's
with...
not because you have too much money and not enough to spend it on?
We are living in mods. Half my population live in a modular complex that was built in 1991 for 10 years when they were supposed to build a new facility at the jail. We were supposed to have a new jail built in the year 2000. It's now 2015. Those cells, some of them don't work. We've tried to put cameras into them in the areas, old showers. We had one medical building where the sides fell off the building. Oh. We actually had to condemn our medical building and move everybody out. So the challenges are there. I don't come in to talk about that. We are doing
No, but it's something to feel proud of. If you had a brand new facility, it's got to be a lot easier to get that high level of accreditation.
And easier to run.
When the walls stay up?
Well, I'll tell you why the new jail would be extremely beneficial for public safety. Not only would it be a nicer environment to work in, of course, but my officers, God bless them, a lot of them have never known a better environment, so they work in this environment. But what we don't have is a thoughtful, laid out plan. When you develop a correctional facility today, there's a sensible area. You come in to classification. Yeah. You have an orientation area. You move people through. You think of, conceptually, you think of how to design a facility based on your needs. Ours was just put here in 1973, here in 1991, here in the 1980s. There's no sense to it. And that creates a lot of problems for our staff when you have to move food.
Just moving people, materials.
You have to move people. We have people have to move all the way across the facility to get to a substance abuse class, for example. They should have facilities down in their area, but they don't. So there's a lot of challenges that go with our antiquated building. It's something which, the Department of Capital Asset Management, the state agency that builds things, the commissioner, both under Deval Patrick and Governor Baker, have come out to my facility. So it's not partisan. Both of them have said, we're going to help you. This is outrageous, your conditions. We are in the process of building a new area where we're going to have a medical unit. We're going to have what we hope is a safe keep area for inmates, an orientation area, things like that. So we're making progress, but that is years out. The first meeting I had after I got elected, but before I was sworn in, I went down to Boston and I just tried to get a sense of, is there any hope for us as far as a new facility? And the word I brought back was, there is nothing in the planning stages at this point. So we just had to double down, buckle down on what we're doing and make sure we just do the best job we can with our facility. But we were very proud to get that 99.5% rating, and I was hoping for that 100, but we can't do it.
Yeah, but you got 100 on what,
everything else.
I could go and try and be rated on being young, thin, and have hair. It ain't going to happen. There's a fat old bald man sitting here.
You got hair.
Yeah, not much. But, you got 100% of what you could. And something to be proud of.
Well, thank you. I am. And that really reflects well on everyone down there work with me. We have a tremendous staff. And I mean the dedication of the people that work there. I'm honored to work with all those people. We work hard. It's a tough environment. It's not for everybody. I tell everyone we hire, from correctional officers to nurses to teachers, you sure you really want to work inside a prison? Because it's a different world when you walk in, because most every employee walks through that gate and hears that bar close behind them. That's not an environment for everybody. But those who enjoy that environment, it's very rewarding.
Well, God bless them. Just dealing with, I know I couldn't do it, Lou. I would end up being one of your inmates. Because if I saw somebody who hurt kids, I just don't have the anybody who hurts a kid, to me, a 12-gauge enema just is fine. Yep. It's really simple. So you got to have an incredible mindset. Well,
we have people that have probably done those type of things in our facility, and we're not judge and jury, so we're in care, custody, and control. So our job and our responsibility is to care, custody, and control of those inmates who are, if they're to be sentenced to go up to state prison, and I hope those people go up there for the rest of their lives and never see the light of day again. But we have to think in those terms. It's professionalism.
No, that's what I say. I admire the corrections officers because they put themselves in harm's way, especially when you're dealing with, that side of the really bad people.
Yeah.
that just don't have normal values.
Now, if you came up someday, and you're welcome to do it, but if you come up someday and you walk the blocks with me and you see the tier time that they get, and by law, I mean, I'll be sued, and there's lawsuits filed every day against, sheriffs and law enforcement officials for virtually anything these days. But if we don't have enough tier time for inmates, they're entitled to X amount. That tier time, you'll have 52 inmates walking around 2 officers.
Oh my God.
2 officers. First time you see that, you're kind of stunned by it. But you know what? We don't have the budget to have the type of security I'd like to have. I can't afford to have, I can only, I have 1,200 inmates.
I'm volunteering as a corrections officer to go stand in the middle of 26 not so happy, not so nice people. Mm-hmm. Oh boy, I don't know what you're paying, but it's probably not enough.
Well, I'll tell you what happens though. We have incidents all the time happen. Inmates get in fights. One of them tries to take a pop at one of my officers. You would not believe, and I'm telling you, you watch this, you're so proud, the response time of our officers. We're all a team, and we all have communications equipment on us. The response time, I'd say within a minute, sometimes we'll have 20 or 30 officers on that scene.
Well, thank God, because
Absolutely.
26 grumpy people, I don't really, Lou, we'll be down there in 5 minutes. By then, it may be a little late.
Exactly. So it's a tough environment. That's why I say it's not for everybody, and it's really challenging. And I want people to appreciate the job these officers do. It's challenging, it's hard, it's stressful, because we all have a lot of accolades, rightfully so, for our law enforcement communities and our firefighters. But I think correctional officers deserve the same consideration.
Absolutely. Now, you're not just limiting yourself to the jail. I hear about going outside on a war on graffiti. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that.
Well, like yourself, I'm sure. Anytime you see graffiti or tagging somewhere, I think it just brings the whole community down. And a lot of tagging, we call tagging graffiti, can be crime-related, gang activity and things like that. So, look, we all know there are certain graffiti artists out there, but I'm talking the run-of-the-mill graffiti does nothing but to depress values in a community. It brings down the morale in a community, and oftentimes it's tied to criminal activity. So when I saw a spate of graffiti a summer or two ago in Worcester, and I noticed what happened in the discussions was private businesses were getting tagged, they were being asked to remove it immediately, or they were facing a potential fine. And they couldn't afford to do it, and they were expressing concern and outrage. The city of Worcester was saying we don't have the capacity in our Department of Public Works to remove the graffiti, and it got my wheels turning. So I started researching what other sheriffs do, because we're county-wide people. And I found out that there are equipment available that I could try to get for our department. It's essentially a sandblasting equipment, but we decided to do it. So we went forward. I asked the city of Worcester, would you join us in this partnership? Yes, we would. We would love the help. I said, I can do this program, start it in Worcester. I can bring it all over Worcester County. So we got the equipment. We trained an officer to run the equipment. Inmates go out with them, and they do the cleanup. We will go out, blast basically, and what we use a non-toxic, it's actually crushed walnut shells out. That's what it is. It works better than anything. We have them spray the graffiti, they blast it off the wall, it's gone. If the paint chips, we'll paint it, have our inmates paint it for you. We do it free of charge, we'll do it for private and public property, and we'll do it as quickly as we can get out there. Now, don't say to me, I called you yesterday, it's still there, but I try to use the Sheriff's Department because I think we are. And I thank you for giving me a chance to talk about it, but I look at the Sheriff's Department as an enormous positive resource for people in Worcester County. Public safety, yes, but putting inmates to work in the community to save you money and get work done, yes. How about removing graffiti from our community? Towns are overwhelmed. A small town doesn't have the ability to remove graffiti.
Well, it's not even that. I could see a shop owner and some gang-related graffitis there. He's got to be wondering, if I remove it, is that going to be considered dissing whatever gang it is, and now I'll get worse. So I would think, just from a safety point of view, what are they going to do, storm the jail? They can't really do anything to the inmates that are in the jail compared to what they can do to some poor shop owner.
No, you're 100% right. I agree with that thought process. It is dangerous to remove graffiti sometimes when it's gang-related. Some of my inmates have told me, Sheriff, when they talked about this, they were like, I could be shot if I remove certain graffiti, and we can't put anybody in harm's way. So we're very sensitive to that. But the reality is, we can do it as law enforcement. We can remove the graffiti for you. It spreads like a weed. If you don't stay on top of graffiti, everyone knows the broken window syndromes, that it spreads like wildfire. So our goal is, to this county, I'm making a pledge, we have the equipment, we have trained an officer, we have the inmates. we will do everything we can to help stay on top of the graffiti issues that go around the county.
Well, the other thing is the inmates must have a unique insight into what does all that mean? Because I can imagine that some of the symbols and all,
Oh, yeah.
you know, to you or I, maybe you'll know more, but, you know, to the average resident, yeah, that just looks like squiggles or something weird.
Yeah.
And they would know, no, you don't, this means that.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of our local police departments are very tuned into it. I think if you talk to Chief O'Loughlin and you talk to the chiefs across the county, they've tuned into graffiti and they know what it is. They know what symbols mean, they know what letters mean, they know what certain numbers mean. And that helps them stay on top of what's going on in their communities. So I think law enforcement in general is tuned into the issue. But I think you make a great point. By the sheriff removing it, it kind of puts law enforcement in charge of it. So maybe you're less likely to be threatened by
retaliation.
Retaliation as an individual. And if we can serve that purpose, all the better.
What can the average resident of a town like Milford do to help the sheriff's department, except not commit crimes, obviously?
Yeah, that's a big help. That was my first thought. You know, all you can do is just kind of keep an eye out for each other. I mean, we really do run the jail. So, but if you have graffiti that you'd like to see removed, for example, call your town officials or your business people, write to the sheriff. If you have a nonprofit in Worcester County and you need help, whether it be a baseball field to be cleaned up, or even a church or a town hall or a veteran center, and you need to have it spruced up or painted and you don't have any money, give the sheriff's office a call. These are things we can help you. As far as helping us, I mean, we're there to serve you. We really are in public safety and service. So our job isn't to ask for your help as much as to help you. We are obviously staying on top of things, educating your children, grandchildren, your communities on the perils of drug use. That's the stem of the majority of crime today in America. So if we can all work together and we can kind of stay on top of the drug issue right now, by family, by community, that will help law enforcement more than anything right now. If we can get that under control, it will change everything on the other end.
It sounds like you gave us a great idea. Lock up, old drugs.
Or call your local police department and ask where where you can.
The good news is Tom
off.
said in the middle of town is a police station with a no questions asked depository.
Exactly.
So if you want to get rid of old medicine, old drugs, just walk in the police station. He says absolutely no questions asked. Nobody looks. Throw them away.
Yeah, it's not recommended that the old way was like to flush them down the toilet. It's not being recommended.
Right back into our water system, our aquifer.
Right. So a lot of people thought they just dispose of them, but the appropriate way to do it is to go to your local law enforcement, and they'll usually have a drop-off box, and they'll take care of it for you.
Thank you for everything you do.
Yeah, it was great to be with you.
Great to have you back.
Thank you.
And as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, we say thank you. We hope that you never really do get Sheriff Lou's hospitality, or that nobody in your family gets free room and board on the state. But it's nice to know that with what resources are available, you're getting the accreditation, you're helping the towns. So for us, to you, thank you. Good night. May God bless.
Not too long since I've been home.